guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring the newest release from Chris Lauren and Colorado Crafts. This is the Confection Collection. I have to say it slowly or I will not say it properly. This is adorable. It's all things like baking and birthday and really, really cute. Love that little raccoon. So when I was originally sent the images, I was totally taken with that little kitty, which is so funny because I am a dog person. I am 110% team dog, but the glasses on that little kitty like sucked me right in. So then once I got them and I was looking at them, this background, this baking background, which by the way has its own set of dies. I think that's super cool that you can stamp it and then, die cut those little pieces out to have them as other images. I thought it would be really cool kitchen wallpaper. So that was the start of the scene. And of course we did a scene card. I mean, honestly, they're the best. I love them. So here what I'm doing is I'm inking up my background with Nautical from Hero Arts. And it is a dark navy. So I'm stamping it off on a piece of copy paper, and then I am second generation stamping it onto my cardstock. This is going to act as my wallpaper, which is going to be like a very subtle monochromatic in the background kind of look. Very happy with the way the second generation stamping came out. And then I am going to stamp, I know you guys were doing a no-line image, so while it should not shock you that I did a scene, you probably should be in awe that I did a no-line coloring scene, because that's not normally my go-to. But because of the way that I envisioned the wallpaper and the little kitty, like this furry little gray kitty, I don't know. I felt like it wouldn't look right with a black outline. I don't know. Maybe Dawn's pulling me to her side. I'm not sure. I don't know what's happening to me. But anywho, I stamped this in a very light gray. All of my images in a very light gray. This is Granite, I believe, from Hero Arts. And I'm not a straight no-line girly. I like to see the line. So I did stamp it twice, just to make sure I was going to be able to see it. I knew good and well any of my coloring was going to cover any of those lines, so I was not stressed about that at all. I knew that it would be able to cover it up. So it's no line coloring, but it's like fake it till you make it no line coloring. So for this background, I did want to add a little bit of shading. I didn't want it to be blue on the stark white, but I also didn't want the coloring to overwhelm the pattern. So what I ended up doing was using my blending brushes, and I have one that's very loved and seasoned with darker blue inks, and then the same thing for the black. So I did not re-ink those. I just used the residual ink that was left on them to add some shading kind of around the corners and down the side. The bottom's going to be covered up with the countertop, so I wasn't concerned about that. If you don't have a really well-seasoned brush that you could use, just choose a really, really light color ink or a very big fluffy brush and use a little bit of pressure. That should still give you a nice, smooth, soft color. So since I wanted my wallpaper to just be kind of subtle in the background, I am using monochromatic colors to color this. So I'm using a B91 and a B95. Now I'm be real with y'all because you know that we don't keep secrets here on this channel. My intention was to use the B93, but what I discovered was mine is totally dried out. And it has no reason to be because I have a re-inker for it. But it was so super dry. So I tried to kind of revitalize the poor sad soul, but I just couldn't get it to work. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I just need to let it soak. So that's what I'm doing. So, but the 95 and the 91 ended up working. I did have a 40 that I had kind of set aside if it didn't work. Now, for those of you saying like, okay, Kelly, well, if it's too dry to fix, then what do you do? It's not buy a new marker. That's not the answer. The answer is to buy a new nib and try again. That is what I will do, because I've already invested into this marker. So if the nib is like super hard and you can't get it soft again, then it's time to buy a new nib, not necessarily a new marker. Okay, moving on. So now the coloring in the background is done. Here I am just creating kind of my own wood grain look for my countertop. I like blues and browns, like warmer browns. They tend to work really well together. And I didn't want it to be all cool tones. Like I like the contrast of the warm. So I did choose to do a warmer brown for my countertop and my accessories. If you are interested in, I really should probably do a new one because that one's so old. I think it's like 6 or 7 years old. I do have a video on my channel that really goes in depth on how to kind of create your own wood grain if you're looking for something more than just a quick little intro to it. Like I said, it is a little bit old. Maybe I'll redo it. Tell me what you guys think. Okay, moving on. So this is just going to, and we're going to add some shadows to it and stuff, but basically we just want to finish off the whole vibe. We have this wallpaper that's very monochromatic, and then we need something to set our little bowl with our spatula and our whisks and our wooden spoon. Speaking of wooden spoons, I saw this t-shirt the other day. I'm sure somebody ripped it off from Etsy because I saw it on like a Facebook ad, which is usually like Temu or Shein or something, which is all stolen stuff. But anyway, and it said wooden spoon survivor, and I laughed so hard because I am indeed a wooden spoon survivor. My mother, who was always in the kitchen cooking or baking or what have you, always had easy access to the wooden spoons. So definitely a wooden spoon survivor. So this part of the bowl, I wanted to color it as if it was kind of like ribbed, like it has that like that texture. So I wanted it to appear white, but it still needs to have a little bit of shading. So I went in and went over the lines that were already there with my darkest color. And then the next color, which is a C3, I went just slightly to the left of all the lines. And then for the C1, I again I went over the C5 and the C1, but on the left-hand side. So that way I was still reserving some white. And later on in the video, we'll kind of bolster that up as well. The other part that's going to be white is the bottom part of the bowl. I went back and forth with how to color this pattern, and ultimately I decided that because I had a gray kitty, I needed to have a colored bowl, and so I chose to do the bowl blue. Let's talk about things you can win, shall we? So this is actually part of this video. Well, not the video itself, but there's a blog hop is what I'm trying to tell you. And there's prizes. I love this release. I think it's super cute, and I'm a baker, so this is totally right up my alley. But you can win one by hopping along the blog hop. I will link it below in the YouTube description. You can win a stamp set with a comment, or if you shop through one of the affiliates, mine or anybody else on the hop, shop through their affiliate link, you can be entered to win the full release, which is super fun. So anywho, now we're moving on to the little kitty. This one I am doing gray. So like the spatula and the bowl, the intention was for them to be left white. So we're just added the shadows. And the whisk. The whisk, obviously, I just added the darkest gray, which you will see ends up becoming kind of like this shadow-ish part of the whisk. But anyway, so do you want to hop along for that giveaway or shop the affiliate links for that giveaway? And then let's talk about, you might have noticed the title of the video and been like, Kelly, we're almost 10 minutes into this video. What is this underrated closer that you are talking about? It's a white gel pen. It's a white gel pen, but you're not going to actually see the white gel pen in use until the end of the video, and you'll see why it is so important to this scene, that it's so necessary to make it complete and go from like, oh, that's nice to like, oh, that's super cool. And it's the white gel pen, and it's a very inexpensive addition to your craft room. You can get one for I think it's like $2, or you can get 3 for under $5 if you buy the 3-pack. I always buy the 3-pack because it's a better deal, and I'm cheap. You guys know that. but the white gel pen is such a, and you hear different people talk about, like they like the Signos, they like, what I've always been a Jelly Roll girl. That's never changed. I have tried the other ones and they have not worked well for me, but I do want to point out that you want the 10 at least. The 8 is very fine and it tends to clog. You don't want the fine tip ones. You want a 10 at least, and then you can vary your pressure for how thick your line will be. Let's talk about this kitty. So as I told you before, I am team dog. I have had a dog my whole life. I have 2 right now, my 2 big girls. But I do have, we had a cat for a while. I might have told you about this. This is my sister's doing, Smokey. This is when we both still lived at home with our parents, but we were adults. So I think Kim had, I think she'd moved out with one of her girlfriends, and then her girlfriend started dating some guy, so then she moved back home. Anyway, long story long. But so she ended up with this cat, and my oldest sister is allergic to cats, but she was married and not living at home. So the deal was like Kim could keep the cat if the cat stayed in her area, or in the basement, because, if my oldest sister was coming over for dinner or whatever, we couldn't have everything covered with cat hair. So his name was Smokey. That was the only cat we ever owned, because like we were just not cat people. We were always dog people. And also like the cat had to stay out of sight because of my parents' dog. They even now to this day still have a dog. I have never otherwise had a cat. I've always just had dogs, but I do have 2 friends, and I acknowledge that kitties are very cute. Okay. I acknowledge a lot of animals are very cute. Like I think baby raccoons are adorable, but would I have one as a pet? Probably not. They're ferociously adorable. I don't disagree with you, but still wild, not domestic animals. Anywho, so I have 2 friends who recently have gotten kitties. One of them, my friend Jen, has Miss Cleo, which isn't that adorable name for a little cat, and she is up to shenanigans. She's very curious. And is all black. And then Dawn, if you guys watch her lives, you've probably heard, they ended up having a kitty that like basically came right up to their doorstep. And it was just a little teeny tiny kitty. And so they kept him overnight. And then, I shouldn't say him, her name's Aster now, took her to the vet and, made sure that she was healthy and had all of her things. And now they have a dog and a cat because they have power too. But Aster is, I think she's a tabby because she's like gray stripedy, and I think that's a tabby cat. Don't quote me because, like I said, not a cat person. Much more familiar with my dog breeds. So anyway, I thought, well, I could send this to either one of them because it's just a super cute little kitty. So once I get the glasses colored, I did go back in and put in just a little bit of a shadow. When you're coloring through the glasses, obviously, like her fur is still the same color on the other side. So you don't want to change that. You still want to color it as if, you'd be able to see her face. We do have again, the white gel pen's going to come in later on to give us the feel of actual glasses. The wooden spoon, I used the same browns that I used for the countertop, as well as this like spatula handle, but I did make them just a little bit darker so that they weren't going to be the same exact tone. For the spoon, like typically that inside portion, is set further down, so that's why I made it darker. And then for the spatula one, it was pretty simple. I just followed the lines of the illustrator to, add the little bit of shadows. And then for this one, I did not go all the way out to the E53. I just went out to the E55. So these are the 3 darkest browns. I went back and forth about whether or not to do the whisk, like also with like kind of a wooden handle, but I thought that it would be a good idea to make at least one of them blue so that it kind of matched the bowl and matched the wallpaper, which would, I know it sounds silly, which would kind of complete my visual triangle for the blues. I know it sounds particularly silly because my whole background is blue, but it does give me 3 blue elements. So for the bowl, I decided to color the little stripy, like, not, what do you call those? Like the rim and the other decorative edge. I don't even know what you call that. I decided to make them both blue. Now, remember, I said I didn't want to make the whole bowl white. I wanted it to be a color. And so ultimately I decided that even though they were going to be blue on blue, that it was going to be better than having a white bowl with a gray kitty. So these little lines that are drawn here, again, I'm just following these little detail edges. And I am going to try to make them look like they are like ribbed or inset, where it's the darkest, and like, why can't I think of the word that I want? It's not fluted, but almost like little pleats in your bowl where you can see those ridges. I'm not very descriptive today, or at least not in a way that's super helpful. I don't know why my brain cannot come up with words. But anyway, so that was the plan. Like the little ridges is what I was going for. And so I just took my darkest color, and sometimes I didn't go all the way up the line. Sometimes I did. I just tried to vary how it would look to make it kind of look more interesting, but still leaving those gaps, especially higher up towards the top of the bowl where they're less gathered and the ridges are more open. It would definitely not be as dark. But I am still leaving just a little bit of a gap at the top for my lightest color, because alcohol markers are transparent. And so even though there's not a lot of room, as I fill those in and kind of feather it down into the lighter color, it will remove a little bit of that color and help it to be a little bit more of a highlight than just what we left there. So then that's pretty much it for the coloring. We're going to move on to the die cutting. And all of these have coordinating dies, and I didn't end up using the ones obviously for the background because I colored it as wallpaper, but I did mention, I think I did anyway, that they do have dies as well, which I really love, because then you can use those little flour sacks and whisks and bowls and everything in other scenes. This, just so you know, I already have more ideas. So you're going to be seeing this one again soon, because I think it's super cute. And I always need birthday cards. Like, that is constantly what I'm making. So for the sentiment, I thought it would be really cute to incorporate the sentiment into the scene as if it was kind of like a framed picture in the kitchen. So this sentiment is actually from, what's it called? Sweet Life? Yeah. And we'll be using this one again. It's like a big giant cupcake with sprinkles and a cherry. It's super cute. But anyway, this one I liked because I could stamp the sprinkle your day with sweetness as the sentiment on the front, and then, you know, a happy birthday sentiment inside, and that would make sense. So I did trim this down. It ended up being, I think, like 3/4 of an inch by an inch, just shy of an inch and 3/4, because then I cut a second piece to go behind it as a mat, but really it's acting as my frame, at an inch and 3/4, I think, an inch by an inch and 3/4. But whatever sentiment you go with, you would just want to trim it, you know, to like a size that's easy for you to figure out what the frame would be. Or don't do the math at all. Just stamp it, trim it, and then glue it down to another piece of cardstock, and then trim your edges so that they're the same. So I did use the same browns. Again, I was a little bit more heavy-handed on the darker side to help create that little bit of contrast. Originally, I went in with the E55, and then I will go back over it with the E57 to make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to glue these together just so that way I can move them as one piece while I am figuring out my card layout. Speaking of moving them as one piece, I knew that I wanted to pop them up over the countertop. So I am going to glue down my countertop. So my countertop, my sentiment will be flat. And then the rest, the spoon, the kitty, the bowl, the spatula, and the whisk will all be popped up. I usually, when I'm coloring any sort of like pattern myself, I usually do go in and get the sides. This one I forgot to do it, so you could see the white edges and it was not making my scene super cohesive. So I did go back in, even though it was already glued down, and make sure that I got the edges with the brown. So now we're going to lay everything out and then we're going to start to glue them together. The reason that I prefer to do this, especially if I'm going to be having them all on the same level, like they're all on the same level of foam, is it's substantially easier to put foam tape on them as if they are one full piece. You don't have to cut as many small pieces of foam tape. You don't have to worry about foam tapes overlapping. And it also helps your die cuts to be really secured to one another because they're secured by that foam tape in the back. So I'm going to get everything laid out and then I will put them, like glue them so that they're all one thing. Now, if you know me, if you've been here for a while, you know I do not love a white outline on a die cut. But typically, I don't do no line scenes. Usually, I have a black outline, which is a nice buffer line for when I want to color in the edges and blend them in. On this scene, we don't have the black outline as a buffer. We have just the white edge. But that's not going to stop me. I'm still going to blend them in. I'm just going to give you some tips on how to do it. First of all, you need to make sure that you're being very careful and very light-handed with your markers because there's no black line to keep them from bleeding into your image. So we need to make sure that we're taking our time and being super, super light-handed. Second of all, start lighter and then go darker if you need to. If you start lighter, you can always add darkness to it to help it blend in. If you go in straight with the dark and it's too dark on such a small area, such as this lip of this die cut edge, it's almost impossible to get rid of. It's almost guaranteed that in trying to get rid of it, you will push it into your actual image, which we do not want. So make sure we're going lighter. Secondly, follow the shape of your images. This one right here is a great example. I have to color over the whisk. I started with the lightest color possible and I followed what should be the shape of the bowl, right? Because that's the object that you would see on the other side of the whisk. Then I'm slowly building back up those same blues that I colored the bowl with because a whisk is, you know what I mean? Basically, you can see right through it. You would still be able to see all of those stripes. Now, you might be saying, Kelly, where is the whisk? That's a good point. I can still see the lines, but they are not prominent. So I'm going to go back in with my C5 and try to go over to the best of my ability, the lines that are there. But you will see as we progress along with this, especially in doing the brown, the whisk really does disappear. So for the background, fortunately for me, that B91 really matched the background quite nicely. So pretty much anything that was up above the bowl, the spoon, the kitty, the top of the bowl edge, I was able to just use that and it matched really nicely. So just make sure you kind of play around with your colors to get a nice match to whatever your background is before you commit to it, especially if you have really light colors. This is not adhered down at this point. I'm just kind of holding it in place, and I am going to go in and mark where my shadows are going to be on my countertop. So I'm going to fill in this. I know it's crazy. I'm going to fill in this whisk and the whisk is going to completely disappear and it's just going to be a handle. But the whisk there's going to be a gap in the center. So the handle is going to touch and the whisk is going to touch, but in the center, there's a gap. Same thing with the spatula. The spatula is leaning up against the whisk. So the bottom half of the handle is going to touch, but the rest of it isn't. And so we have to allot for that in our shadows. And what that means is when a object is touching the table, the shadow is touching the object. When the object is leaned up against something and it's not touching the table, then the shadow does not touch the object. So here you can see I am putting in the shadow for the whisk and for the handle, but then I'm also going to have a little bit of a shadow in between where it doesn't touch. And that's going to sit down lower than the whisk itself. So when I put it on there, you're going to have the darker ones touching in the front and back, and the one in the middle has a little bit of a gap. Same thing with the spatula, where it comes up over the whisk, the shadow is going to have a gap. Here, I'm just going back in and refining any of the blending things that I need to do. To make sure that I'm going to be happy with it. I'm going back in with that C5 and again going over the whisk. And this is where we're going to add all the foam tape. So the title of the video, which was like the totally underrated, because it is. Now, it's hard to show you how wonderful the white, I use it on every card. I use a white gel pen on every single card. But when you can see it, is at the end of the project. And so sometimes I think it kind of gets just skipped on by because we do all the other things. In this video, I made sure to leave it in because it makes the card. Not that like all of the other things aren't lovely. They are, okay? They're really wonderful. I love the kitty. I love all of the little details that we've put in there. But the details that are going to take it like up and over the top are going to be with the white gel pen. Here I've adhered down my sentiment and then I'm just adding a shadow onto the wallpaper because it would have a shadow. So I like the sparkles. I added some glimmer to the bowl, to his or the kitty's glasses, and then their ears and bow. And now here's where we're going to bring in the white gel pen. So the white gel pen is going to give me the opportunity to do first the whiskers. Because the whiskers they're not missing. Cat's whiskers are very thin. They would have whiskers. But in this type of scene where it's a no line coloring scene, black whiskers are going to look very stark. So putting in white whiskers and allowing them to just sit on top of the glasses, and stretch kind of out over his paw, really give him a lot of character. I'm also going to use it to add some highlights to his glasses, to the glass part of his glasses, which will help it to look as if you are looking through the glasses instead of they're just empty frames on his face. I'm going to add a white highlight. Remember we talked about adding all those little shadows into the portions that we wanted to create that kind of ridged effect. Well, adding in that white gel pen now to the right of all the lines instead of the left is going to help it look even more dimensional. The whisk is going to be, this is what takes it, guys. Because before you could not even see the whisk, and now the white gel pen just going over those lines makes the whisk appear. I mean, the card would not be the card without that whisk, and you can only do that with a white gel pen. It's a super cheap addition to your craft room. If you don't have one, please get one. Also, don't forget to hop along for your chance to win. I hope that you guys learned a lot and enjoyed the card. Thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate you, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.